Welcome to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. In tonight's episode, you'll hear about a very strange Sasquatch occurrence, one I haven't heard a lot about, and this takes place in the Blue Lakes region of California. So get ready and see if you can figure out what it was that set this witness on edge. You're not going to want to miss this one. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to John today. John's an individual I got connected to through email, and he's wanting to share a few experiences he's had throughout his life and just make sure that he's able to get it all out there. So welcome to the show, John. How's it going today?
Great. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like from what I know about what you're going to share, we've got some really interesting things to talk about regarding Northern California, but feel free to take us back to when these events first started happening to you, and we'll follow along with you.
Okay, so in the summer of 82, 83, and 84, I worked for a company called Multiple Use Management, and we were basically campground rangers for PG&E campgrounds. So they would start me off in Northern California at Lake Spalding at the 5,000-foot elevation, and I would stay there and open up that campground. And then when the snow melted, they would move me up to Blue Lakes at 8,000 feet elevation. And so this is dealing with the Blue Lakes area, which is a four-lake complex and four-wheel drive roads that go each direction of it. And I guess I'll start with, I believe it would be the summer of 83. And again, at this time, I didn't believe that Bigfoot were here, but I'm a curious guy and I've always had an interest in the topic. And I interviewed everybody about it because I was fishing for information, trying to fill in the dots. So I got a lot of information over the 3 years talking to so many people on a daily basis. But I was fishing one morning. I got out at before daybreak because I wanted to float a night crawler on top and catch me a big brown up in Upper Blue. And the road goes right alongside the lake, and it's a fairly decent sized lake. It was a really calm morning, not a ripple on the water. You could hear a noise would travel a mile. You could hear small noises really well. But as the light started getting a little bit lighter and lighter, I had noticed a figure on the opposite side of the lake. And there's quite a bit of distance involved, but the figure was all black from head to toe. And I figured it was just a guy in a hoodie that was fishing on the opposite side of the lake. Again, I didn't really believe that Bigfoot were part of of this area. I figured they were all up north, further up, above Mount Shasta in the coastal area. Anyway, so I sit there and watch the thing a little bit. I wasn't really focusing on it too much because I thought it was just another fisherman. But I watched it for the whole event was probably 40, 45 minutes. And it almost looked like it was mimicking a fisherman. And again, it looked like it had a stick in its hand. And you could see enough detail. You couldn't see facial details, but you could see the body outline fine. And it looked like it was waving a stick and playing in the water with it. And I thought maybe it was just a fisherman that had gotten his line stuck, and was trying to get the lure out of the roots or trees. But it almost looked like for a while there. But then what was weird is about 29 degrees that morning, and I had a North Face Gore-Tex parka on and a down jacket underneath that. And I was sitting on an ice chest and my butt was freezing. The ground was slightly damp all around the lake from the morning dew. And this thing had laid on its belly and was running the stick around in the water, or fishing pole if it was a fisherman. And this went on for maybe 5-10 minutes, and I couldn't see how. I go, man, that guy's freaking, I don't know how he's doing it, because I was freezing my butt off just sitting on a small little igloo ice chest. And I really didn't think much about it. Didn't even question my mind that this even could be a Bigfoot. And then the weirdest thing happened while I was watching it. It got in a crab position where it was on its back. And then it had its, its knees and its hands down below, like in a crab walk, and it moved across this boulder in one fluid move in the crab position and moved across the top of the rock. And this was a huge rock, and it was just so smooth, and I was all, holy crap, that's not even human. And I go, well, if I ever find out there's Bigfoot in this area of California, that's a Bigfoot, because it sure wasn't human. And never thought more about it again. And so I'd beaten every other fisherman out in the lake this morning. And on the far side of the lake, about a mile away, maybe if that, I don't know, it sounds about right, but you could hear the two old men coming down to get in their little trolling aluminum boat and start trolling. And you could hear them, it was so calm out, you could hear the fishing poles laying in the bottom of the aluminum boat, and you could hear as they set their ice chest in it, because the sound was just being carried across the lake with no breeze or anything. And you could hear them brr, 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 as they tried to start the motor. And the second that motor fired up, this thing was gone in the bushes and had disappeared. And so that pretty much covers, that was the strangeness of it, was how and this was, only about a half an hour into daylight. So it was just kind of weird. The way the crab walking position was definitely not something. I was very physically fit. I was running 5 to 10 miles a day at 8,000 feet. And training for boxing, and the movement it did, and I'm kind of a tall, lanky, wiry guy, and the movement it did was not something I could ever achieve or even come close to. So I never thought it was a Sasquatch up until later years, and then I saw I believe it was Russ Jones talking about an incident where the girls that had dropped the earring, and the thing bent over backwards in that crab position. And that's when I decided to give you a call and share what I viewed that morning. Now there's a lot of different things. Over the 3 years, I probably talked to 9 different people that didn't know each other and all had different stories. So there was, as you come into Lower Blue, on the left, there's a little pond. It's called Frog Pond. I did have one of the campers that told me that, they knew somebody that had saw one cross the road right there. Again, I never took it seriously, but it was just information I put in my cap. There was also, we had, my dad worked for PG&E, and he was the lake tender there, and he got me the job camping there. So we talked to all the PG&E guys, and one of the helicopter pilots that would fly in, we were talking to him, and he said one winter, and he didn't tell me what the date was or what year or anything like that, but he said he flew in there when the snow was 30 feet deep, which is probably about 5 feet over the chimney stack of the highest cabin that was there. So the cabins were completely submerged in snow, and he had said that he had flown in there one time and he had landed, and that there were tracks. And the tracks went down almost 5 feet into the snow, and you could see, and he said you could see bare footprints in the bottom with a fairly large stride. And he said he had no idea what it was or anything, but that was an interesting note that he had come up with. So I had also worked with another campground attendant there. It was just me and him who took care of these the whole campground complex. And this guy was Chico State's #2 runner in the early 80s. So this was a guy that's as fast as you're going to find a young fella. And this guy, I was running 5 to 10 miles, and he could leave me at any time. I was doing it recreational. This guy was good. So he could literally haul butt. And he would often do 10, 15 miles a couple times a week. He came back one day, and he come walking up the driveway, and from a distance of 20 yards, I mean, literally 60 feet away, he was white as a ghost. You could see he was shaken up. And I asked him, hey, what's going on? What's the matter? I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. And I grilled him as he came up the steps again. He wouldn't talk about it. and I couldn't get anything out of him, but you could see that this guy was shaken up. I mean, it was visible from a long distance away. So I let him take a shower. He had a couple beers for dinner, and he sat down to dinner. And, I go, come on, man. And he was, I'm not talking about it. The guy was just adamant about not, and I'm somebody, I won't let it go. So I kept after him a little bit, but without being too much of a pain in the butt. But I said, come on, was it a mountain lion? Was it a coyote? Was it a bear? What's got you all shaken up? And he goes, it wasn't any of those. And he wouldn't come out and say what it was, but I got it out of him. And what he did say was that something trailed him. He was on a trail, and he was out in the middle of nowhere out there, and he was coming back on the trail. And for about, he said, in between a half mile and a mile, something was off in the brush, trailing him and breaking through the thick brush as fast as he could run on that trail. It kept up with him for a long distance on his run. And that was all I could get out of him. He wouldn't admit to it, and he wouldn't talk anymore. And after he had told me those details, that was, he climbed up and basically was done at that point with sharing any information that he could. So, and there were other campers. There was a Girl Scout camp there, and there was supposed to be one that had, there was a report of one going through the Girl Scout camp that somebody had reported. I think it was the gentleman who was the person responsible for hiring us with multiple use management, having the actual contract in that area. I think he's the one that had reported the Girl Scout company had actually somebody something like that running through. And so that is my story there. The only other stories that I have that might be of any value to anybody was my dad also worked at the Wishon Lake complex. So Granite Construction and the PG&E were putting in a pipeline that went from McCourtney Reservoir to Wishon Reservoir. And Wishon Reservoir is at an elevation of 8,000 feet. It doesn't have like Highway 80 that goes up and over the summit. It's just a two-lane highway that goes up to 8,000 feet and dead ends pretty much at Wishon Reservoir. And so this is when I was 15. I'm 62 now, so you can do the math. So this would have been the later 70s when this took place. But we were walking across the dam, and you could walk across the dam at this time, and you could look down in that crystal clear water, and you could see big browns, floating along, and you're always wanting to try to, but the water was down so far, it wasn't a place that you could really fish with any competence. But my dad and my uncle Mike, who is exempt foreman for PG&E over in Northern California for general construction, they were having a conversation, talking, I forget whatever they were talking about with. So they had they weren't focused. And I'm sitting there kind of standing around twiddling my thumbs. Something below that dam in the drainage, and it was kind of a wide drainage, and there was a lot of brush involved, but all of a sudden you heard these dogs started barking, and what sounded like an escaped chimpanzee from a zoo that was being eaten on by dogs. And it was probably 2 or 3 dogs that were barking and chasing, and all. You heard movement, so that's why I'm saying chasing. But they were chasing whatever this was, and it sounded exactly like a pissed off chimpanzee that was screaming bloody murder while the dogs were chasing it. And this went on for 2-3 minutes. And, and I, hey guys, to my dad and my uncle, I was 15. Hey, what's going on? What's that? And, and they just, kind of, whatever, they were busy talking, don't interrupt us. But there was that. And at that same lake, there was another time we were fishing in a cove. And I heard this loud, it's what people I think refer to as samurai chatter. And I thought it was 2 Asian gentlemen that were fishing around a curve where I couldn't see them. We were in a little cove, and it was like on the opposite side of the cove. But this was really loud yelling. It would be like them yelling, having a conversation at the top of their lungs. And this went on for Oh, probably a period over 90 minutes, and it was off and on. So it would go on for a little bit, be quiet, go on. And so I'm sitting there fishing in this cove, and all of a sudden a boat pulls up, and it was my dad. He's going to come take us. We're going to go to the opposite side where the water comes in the lake. So he picks us up and we take off, and we head out of the little cove I was in. As we went around that bend at the end of the cove, I expected to see a couple fishermen over there from all this noise and yelling that they were making and fishing for so long. And when we went around the corner, there was absolutely nobody there, nobody fishing. And we were in the only place you had to pass by where we were sitting to get to where they were at, or have a boat. And the only boat that came in that area was my dad. So that again, Wishon Reservoir, that's in the mountains above Fresno, California. And then other than that, I was a water well driller, and I commuted up into the Tahoe area for 10 summers. And we drove around a lot of areas. I think it's 397 or 395 that goes in between Truckee and Sierraville. And you kind of go, you really don't go over a summit, but you sort of go up and down. And about halfway through that one night, in a place where there's no place to park a car, and it was up a 20-foot cliff, there was some kind of a road sign, and I forget what the exact road sign was, but there was a human-looking figure standing up against the road sign with his hand on it, in a place where there's no people, no parking, no cars. At nine, I think it was around nine. It was a little after 9 o'clock at night, and you could just see the silhouette standing up there. But it was kind of weird that in this mountainy area that there was be somebody just standing there in a place you really couldn't even cross the road. And again, everything I say could have been a person, could have been just a person standing up there, but why it would be beyond, I don't want to say, everything I see is a freaking Bigfoot, but it was kind of a weird place, and it was basically in the middle of nowhere. So I don't know why somebody would be standing up there, but those are the stories I've got to share.
Wow, those are fantastic accounts, and thank you for sharing those. I mean, that I don't think I've ever heard anything from the Blue Lakes area, and just for you to be able to be cognizant enough at that time to be able to interview people and just ask, hey, have you ever experienced anything weird? Maybe you said something like that and you still remember it, man.
I'm a talker. I like to talk, and I chat with people. And I did forget to add that I was cross country. There's at the below Blue Lakes, there's a blacksmith, the remnants of a cabin, and ain't much remnants left. But there were people there in the 1800s, and I collect the old bottles from the 1800s in California, and I love the history and the anthropology side of the whole thing. So I would go cross country around there, and I would look for stuff. And I was in between, on the far side of Lower Blue, there's a small ridge that kind of goes up, and on the other side of that ridge is Twin Lake. And there's a road on the next to Twin Lake on the opposite side in that little sort of valley that lake lies in. I was coming down that ridge cross country, and I'm moving through, and I heard a whistle that was it reminded me of a hunter going, "Hey, I'm over here." And that's the gut feeling that I got. And I yelled out, "Hey, don't shoot. I'm over here." I thought it was a hunter going, "Hey, I'm over here. Don't mess with me." And I just, let him know, because I didn't want to get shot by some freaking moron camper that was out hunting when he shouldn't have been. And we did get deer hunter every once in a while that would camp 5 miles away. And there's also a place called Bear Valley, and they would go down to Bear Valley and hunt that area, 5 miles away down a 4-wheel drive road. So anyway, I didn't know what it was, but I went and looked and that whistle came from ground level. And it was a loud whistle, and it wasn't a normal bird whistle. I've been out in the woods my whole life. I've never heard a bird sound like a human whistle, that close anyway. You can usually tell the difference pretty easy. But I heard that, and I went towards the whistle where I heard it from, which is only like 20 yards away, 20, 30 yards maybe. So I walked that, 100-ish feet, and there was nothing. I couldn't see anything. The brush was, I got to a point where the brush was so thick I couldn't investigate any more into it, and that was just, okay, never thought much more about it. I did tell that to BFRO, and I did talk to, was it Bob or Robert Strange? And I had a conversation with him and told him about this, about that whistling event, and it is posted at the BFR's website. I never even mentioned the crab walking one because I didn't even think at the time. I never even put two and two that it was I never even thought about it, so it wasn't something that I had to go and tell anybody. But that was another aspect of that general area. And after we hang up, I'll probably remember some things that some other people said, because
right, that's how it goes.
So dang long ago.
Wow, that is very interesting. And you got to talk to I believe that individual is that's Bob Strain, which
Right.
That's very cool. He's a great guy to talk to. I've talked to his wife Kathy, is very knowledgeable. They're both knowledgeable about Bigfoot for sure.
Right.
Wow. A few things I wanted to clarify or ask you about, especially the crab walking incident. Do you remember roughly about how tall it was, or also did it have a certain color to its hair, if you saw any?
Right. So it was black, and this was, the same way when you see a brown bear that's all black. It was just that same, it was black from head to toe, and it was an even color black. I couldn't make out, again, even facial features because of the distance involved. But when I say black, it was the same color black from head to toe. It didn't have like a jacket line or light black, and with different colored pants. So, but it was black, and I would guess it to be, it didn't have a big stocky build. It was, my best guesstimate would be 6 foot tall and just a human sized build. It didn't look, super broad. I've heard some people say, that they're the size of their body shapes like a 50-gallon barrel, or just huge, thickness wise. And it looked no different than a human at that distance.
40 to 45 minutes, that's a really long time to watch something, especially, something like a Bigfoot. Did you notice,
Right.
You already mentioned that it was waving a stick around, playing in the water with it. Were there any other
Right.
fidgety movements it would do, or maybe that was
See,
really the only
nothing,
thing?
you really, so the distance that this thing was away, you couldn't see fidgety.
Okay.
You could see the basic, you could see if somebody that far away, you can make out their arms and legs and head quite clearly. I couldn't make out a neck or lack of neck. Again, I thought my impression was at the time was that it was a guy with a black hoodie. So yeah, I didn't see a neck. And I'm just going to say, with that kind of a distance, there really weren't any details that I could add, or I would have probably shared it with you. It was just one of those things. I never would have even remembered this event if it wasn't for that crab walk, the thing going upside down. But the weird part about it was the rock was it had a dome, and it moved from one side of that rock to the other in one fluid motion upside down with its back facing the rock. And that was like, holy crap. I go, that's not human. I go, if I ever find out Bigfoot, or in this part of California, that's a Bigfoot. Forgotten it for a long time, up until, I got to going, oh yeah.
So was it a very quick transition when it went to that crab walk?
So I didn't, what I saw was when I looked over back across the lake, all I saw was it in that crab position. And then in one, it had, so its back would have been about 2 foot. There was like a 2 foot gap between its back and the rock. And it went up and over the top of this rock that was probably, if I said it was 8 foot, and it just was fluid the way it went, with its back up and over to the other side, and it didn't disappear. I don't remember when it went to the other side of the rock, it didn't disappear completely, but I didn't see what it did after that.
Gotcha. I mean, very interesting accounts. And so when you said you were hearing samurai chatter, I would assume you probably also heard the Sierra sounds.
I've heard some of them, yes.
Okay. Was that similar then to what you heard during those 90 minutes?
The volume and the loudness was similar. The words being used, I don't remember. I mean, I just remember the loud chatter because it was so many years ago. Mm-hmm. I don't remember the any of the wording or aim because it wasn't something that I was used to, and I heard samurai chatter probably 15 years ago, maybe 12, I don't know, whenever, maybe 10, 15 years ago when internet got popular. I think I'd searched it and heard the Sierra sounds.
Gotcha.
But I talked Moore, I believe is it Ron Moore?
Ron Moorhead. Yep.
Yeah, Ron Moorhead.
That's something I actually was kind of curious about on the side, but man, how cool is that to know that, hey, you're in the general vicinity of where Ron and Al Berry captured that audio back in the early 70s. Very, very cool.
Right.
I'm sure you would have told me if you had, but during the samurai chatter, anything like that, there was not anything captured on audio or video, correct?
No, this was in the late 70s, so it wasn't in a time where people had cell phones or any sort of equipment with it, and I'm just I had a 13-year-old brother and a 15-year, me being 15, and we're sitting there, and Dad took us with him. We were sleeping out at night, and I never heard the samurai chatter in the week of outdoor camping right there in that general location while Dad was working. We never heard or saw anything, but the only thing I do remember is the samurai chatter and then the screaming below the dam that sounded like an escaped chimpanzee with dogs on his tail. And I wish I would have known a lot of the stuff that I know now because I spent 3 summers at 8,000 feet. How many, if you heard a howl, you go, what's that? But you didn't make any notice of it. I wonder how many good sounds I could have, if I was there and had recording equipment, that I would have just, been able to record instead of, hey, what was that? And not even remember it now.
Absolutely. Man, what a fascinating account, a group of accounts, really. And have you ever, in the time since then, looked to see if there's been other sightings or encounters in these same areas?
Yes. So they're in the general, not far from where I had the crab walking sighting is not far from, I think it's Snow Lake, but they're on the BFRO website. There's somebody that actually got a print and photographed a print in that general neighborhood. So I do know that's there, but they listed mine as I believe is Fisherman Hears Whistle. Here's, I think it's Whistle in the Wood or something is what they had put down for that event.
Gotcha. And nothing else about the Blue Lakes area though?
No, and what's funny is every story that I'm telling you is not in there either because, well, the PG&E guy, he wasn't something he was really interested in. He's deceased now, so it's not like I can't go back and confirm with him any other things. But I grilled him pretty well while he was there, and he didn't have anything, extra to add about it or say he had ever saw anything from flying over the Sierras for, his whole career. But he did mention that, with 30-foot deep snow that he did find, he says you could see that it wasn't a boot, that it was actually a footprint in the bottom of those, in the snow, when the snow was 30 foot deep, which is interesting because it's, at 8,000 foot with 30 feet of snow. I want, how does something stay alive in that kind of environment? You would think I've always been curious about the migration pattern of them and or if they migrate, but that kind of goes against that.
Yeah, this interview is a great example of how important it is for an individual that has, accounts like this to reach out to a show like mine, or you could do other shows, but at least have it documented in the public somewhere, because there's no other accounts that I can find either of Sasquatch activity around this Blue Lake area, the Blue Lakes of California, and you've got a ton of them, and this could be the only time that it's talked about. Although it'll be interesting if other listeners reach out, maybe they've had their own activity in the same region. But
that's what part of my conversation with you and doing this is, I'm hoping that other ranger who was Chico State's #2 runner, I'm hoping that he hears it and comes forward with, hey, that was me. And, and I doubt that he will, but maybe he's taken an interest to it in his later years and wants to share what he actually saw that day. But it's just hilarious. It's not hilarious, but it was such a stunning thing to see a guy 50 feet away and see him white as a ghost, and knew that something was radically wrong, just from the look at his face from a distance, and you could see it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, whatever it was, it scared him, and he didn't. And this guy was straight laced. I mean, he would drink, maybe one, maybe two beers. When I say he was drinking beer, he wasn't, a 6-pack or a 12-pack kind of guy. He was one or two custom, fancy beer, and he didn't smoke, and he was just, he was a stand-up guy, and I don't think he wanted anybody to. I don't think he knew how to process whatever had happened to him. And, maybe it was a mountain lion or bear, but the fact that he denied that it was any of the wild animals in that area leaves me open to, to lean towards, the possibility of a Bigfoot.
Absolutely. And
I'm trying to stay as objective as possible.
Right. Yeah, and that individual is more than welcome to reach out if they would like. They can reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com, or anyone else with info about the areas that are talked about in this episode. But wow, what a fascinating conversation! And John, thank you so much for coming on the show, spending some time this afternoon to share what you experienced. I want to make sure that you were able to share everything that you came to the show to talk about today.
Absolutely. I think I've picked up everything. I don't think that there's any other details right off the top of my head that are worth mentioning.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on the show today, John. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Just want to take a minute to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. John's story is one of those rare accounts that haunts you, not just because of what he saw crawling across the boulder, but because of the questions it leaves behind about how close these creatures can really get. So huge thanks to John for sharing his memories from the Blue Lakes region of California and beyond, and for keeping these stories alive after decades in the back of his mind. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new episodes, and share this one with a friend who's into Bigfoot, the California wilderness, or just a good old-fashioned mystery. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you're following the show there. And if you'd be willing to leave a 5-star positive review and rating, it really helps more folks find us. Now, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot encounter, especially around the Blue Lakes region or anywhere in Northern California or anywhere in the world, I'd love to hear from you. So please send me an email at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Big things are coming up soon for the Bigfoot Society podcast. My goodness, we're getting close. This happens in 2 days. On August the 8th, we'll be switching over to a brand new membership platform that is integrated into our website, bigfootsocietypodcast.com. You're going to get an extra episode every week, extra content, dedicated places for members to hang out and chat, movie night every month, and a really fun hangout at the end of each month where I share a lot of stuff that I don't share on the show about what I've been up to. If you want to check it out early, you might be able to check out bigfootsocietypodcast.com and check out the members login area and see if you can sneak in early. But we'll see you back on August 8th. At that time, the only place to be a supporting member of the Bigfoot Society podcast will be through going to the website and the members login. There will no longer be a members area on the YouTube channel. Now, you can still watch the show on YouTube, but there won't be a place to get extra content on the YouTube channel. So all you YouTube listeners and watchers, you want to check this out and make sure you're signed up to get the ad-free episodes and the extra content and the episodes early that you guys love over there. Anyways, that's the news right now. So thanks again for following along with the Bigfoot Society. And until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there, and see you in the woods.